College Game Day is not coming to Syracuse, and Carlos Vettorello is the most disappointing player on the Syracuse football team this season. We're going to talk about all that and more on Locked On Syracuse. It starts right now.
Are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Matt Bonaparte, Owen Valentine with you on your Tuesday episode of Locked On Syracuse. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. And today's episode of Locked On Syracuse is sponsored by SimpliSafe Home Security with fast protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe. 24/7 monitoring agents capture evidence to accurately verify a threat for faster police response. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Visit simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege to learn more. And here we are. I said there's no game day at Syracuse this season. I wish there were, and I hope the governing body of where they decide game day is going to be, the ESPN producers, I hope they decide that I'm wrong. But I don't feel as if they're going to be nice to Syracuse fans, despite I think it's great for their show. Syracuse is one of the hottest, most exciting teams in the country right now. You don't want a spot like that? Bring the show to Syracuse for the first time ever, I believe. That would be awesome. Owen, how do you feel about this whole issue?
I am so desperate for it to make its way here. And I think the Syracuse fan base is in the same boat in that it just like you want it to happen and you've gotten so close. You go back to 2018 and you think about, or 2019, excuse me, and you think about you start the season ranked after you have your best season in however long with a 10-3 record. You're a ranked team. You shut out a Liberty football team to start the season. Then you play Maryland. And you probably can lose to Maryland in a close game and still have game day. But you get torched, torn apart, limb from limb, embarrassed against a Maryland football team that I don't believe ended up being that good.
They lost like 60-0 the next week to Penn State or something. Oh, look. Yeah, that was the worst loss in the Dino era by far, I think.
And that, in terms of implications, I think you definitely have a case, right? And you lose game day against Clemson the following week. Like you were that
everything
close in
changes if they win that game. Like everything is different if they win that game.
I agree. There really is a huge change if that game is won. You were so close to game day that year. This year you come around, right? The expectations are what the expectations are. But you've all of a sudden got 3 wins against Power 5 teams. You're 5-0. You're a ranked football team. And after the bye week, you've got an NC State team coming to the Dome that is 14th right now and is playing a really solid Florida State team. And with a win against Florida State can be close to that top 10 threshold if a couple of things go their way this week as well. It's going to be, a top 15 team against a top 25, maybe even pushing top 20 team. Also, depending on how things go this week. That is a case. That is probably the best case Syracuse has had for game day in some time. We've been seeing the rumblings on Twitter today. It's the first time, as long as NC State stays ranked, which we discussed before we hopped on, doesn't seem like something likely, or they're likely to fall out of the rankings, even with a loss to Florida State, if that were to happen. It's the first time 2 ranked teams will be playing in the Dome on the football field since 2001. It's been 21 years since that's happened. This is the best case that Syracuse has had to host game day, probably ever. Maybe there are some other spots where I'm not thinking of off the top of my head where they've had a case, but you think, right, they haven't been 5-0
since 2019. No, this is the best case they've had because they haven't
Yeah.
been ranked since that Maryland
I'm
game.
saying even in some time before that, probably the best case they've had would be this NC State game as well, which I guess says something about the cases that they've given ESPN to bring game day to Syracuse. But there really haven't been a ton of like, why is game day not coming here moments? And it's more so been, they haven't had that convincing case. This is the most convincing case I think I've seen out of them that comes to immediate memory. And if I'm missing something, hit us in the replies or shoot us a DM or whatever, because I'm curious to know if I'm just mentally missing something right now or if this really is the first, true case that they've had in some time for game day.
Yeah, I mean, Syracuse football, I mean, unless they really step it up during this 6 week stretch, and hey, some people out there want us to be the spreader of positive vibes, which I'm happy to be. If they can go out there and go into week 12 with one loss or something, which is, in my opinion, wildly unlikely, but possible,
Yeah.
then that'll be the peak of excitement. But for now, there's a decent chance going into this week, it's the peak of excitement this year for the regular season. Just because undefeated team against a top 15 team. I mean, like you said, first time since 2001 that Syracuse is going to play a ranked opponent in the Dome as a ranked opponent itself. So there's a lot of excitement going into this game. I think that they should get game day, but obviously I'm biased and so are you.
Yeah. Use the
There
connections,
are what?
Wildack. Use the connections. Come on.
True. There are other good games that week, which I think
Yeah.
is another reason people are a little bit hesitant to say that Syracuse should have it. Alabama's got a big game against Tennessee, Oklahoma State, TCU, Penn State, Michigan, and then what? There's USC, Utah. So there's that as well. And then also Mississippi State, Kentucky. There's a great tweet that was tweeted by at QSports44 where he kind of breaks down the entire game day situation.
Yeah.
So I would go look for that if you want some more context on the situation, because he kind of shows, or she, I don't know who it is, shows all the situations, each game, why or why not they would put it on game day and everything. I thought it was really, really well done. So
Yeah.
um, there's a multitude of things that game day or multitude of directions they could go, but with NC State having been it against Clemson
I was
two
just gonna
weeks
say.
ago,
Yeah.
that also hurts. So there's that to think about.
Yeah, I was gonna say, right? You look at that tweet from at Q Sports 44, and fortunately for Syracuse, in their case for game day, is a lot of these matchups have something that's already happened with game day or a major game day connection that's already occurred this year. Like Tennessee has already hosted game day, which is big because that Alabama Tennessee game is going to be the biggest game of the week in terms of ranking, barring something crazy happening, this weekend. In terms of ranking, that is the biggest game, but that has already happened. So they have some things in their favor if you're Syracuse. But as you said, what looming against them is the fact that NC State was a part of game day this week, albeit at Clemson, in a deserving game this week to have game day be at Clemson. Although, and it worked out that Kansas is getting it next week. But I think that Kansas Duke game had a case, given the whole situation. But this is the best chance that Syracuse has had to host game day. And I think it would be so awesome to see like the stakes of this game, the rumblings already, the push from everyone on Twitter and social media to get to the Dome for this game because of the significance of it. And the best, it's really turned into the best game that Syracuse hosts this year. You thought it was going to be Notre Dame, but now this NC State game really is the biggest game that Syracuse hosts this year. So there's this huge push to get there already. Like if you were to be able to turn it into that full day thing, starting with game day, getting into a tailgate, and then going to a game, that would be pretty awesome. Another knock is, and yes, you can make a change, you can flex things if it's appropriate. It's a 3:30 game on ACC Network when all is said and done. It's not the
It's true.
prime time look you're looking for. It's not the network recognition you're necessarily looking for, which I guess you can say says enough in terms of why they're not going to bring game day here if that ends up being the case. I just think as I look into this more and more, I am not convinced on the likelihood that it comes to Syracuse, even given what I just joked about in the John Wildeck connection, which I don't think should not be considered at all in this conversation because it's definitely worth something.
It's kind of hard to ignore. I mean, that's the guy that
Yeah,
would have been the top guy at ESPN if he didn't come be the Syracuse AD. So, kind of a tough thing to ignore, but at the same time, I don't know how much it actually changes things. It looks like it won't. So, the way the cookie crumbles. Anyway, let's take a little bit of a break. I'm going to tell you about Built Bar. Built Bar is back, people. And I'm going to take, you know, a chance to tell you about something great. All right. Built has done it again, people. They have made cookie dough chunk puffs that have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks. And of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to built.com. Run to snag a box for you and the family. It's the perfect treat. Or if you're Owen, you find a good hiding place, you hoard them for yourself, you just eat those things all day, all night. Uh, like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate covered cookie dough, light, fluffy texture. They're good, man. What's great about Built is that all the bars are also made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite. Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. Ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Built bar. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKEDON15. That's all one word, LOCKEDON15, and get 15% off your order. Promo code is LOCKEDON15. All right, we're back. Matt Bonaparte, Owen Valentine with you on your Tuesday episode. Very exciting. Let's talk biggest disappointments and biggest surprises, not necessarily in that order, for Syracuse football this season. You already heard my take on biggest disappointment, so yeah, we will start there. It's Carlos Vettorello, okay? This guy, Carlos Vettorello, has the gall, has the audacity to be this bad. Uh, it pains me because I want to like Vettorello, but he has just been not very good for the entirety of his time at Syracuse. Redshirt junior, he's been here for a million years, and it seems like every penalty is him, or at least like 70% of the offensive line penalties are him. How do you have a false start? You're the center. I don't get it. It makes no sense. A snap infraction? Like, what are you doing, Carlos? Figure it out. Also, most sacks, oftentimes, I feel like Carlos is missing those blocks. He's a guy that, you come into this year, you think of this offensive line, it's Matthew Bergeron. That's the guy you think of. But
yeah,
secondarily, it's kind of Carlos because he has been all over the line. 2019, when Syracuse's offensive line was really struggling, they were playing Carlos at left tackle and Service at center. And then right at the end of the year, they were like, maybe this Carlos guy's not very good. Let's put him at center and Service at left tackle. And it worked because Service was better. And Vettorello isn't very good. And, I don't mean to rag on Carlos, but it's just I've been disappointed with what's going on. Tough
yeah,
love.
tough love, right? Prove him wrong, Carlos. Please, we would love to see it. But yeah, it's unfortunate to watch sometimes and just frustrating because it seems like the O line has struggled and they have struggled with penalties, and then it seems like with all too great a frequency, it is something with him, which is unfortunate to see because of I don't want to say the true expectations of this O line, but it was anticipated that this O line was making a big jump, and they've improved. but not to the level that you really have wanted them to at this point. And the penalties, really, amongst a few things, have been that kryptonite. I think penalties are just sort of, your exact case in point for this discussion in terms of the struggles that they've had, and then with Vettorello being, I guess, the poster child for that so far this year. Definitely. I copped out, I guess, but I think it's a good point in terms of my biggest disappointment. I've gone with a trio that going into the season I had pinned as sort of the three-headed monster that was going to be the Syracuse receiving core. And I did so because, you look at Syracuse's 2021 stats, and outside of Sean Tucker, these are your three highest receiving yards individuals, or your three players with the highest total receiving yards, and that's Courtney Jackson, Damien Alford, and Anthony Quealy. And I will say that Courtney Jackson has been the best of the three this year, which I guess makes sense because expectations based on last year's numbers had him as the best of the three in terms of last year's numbers. But I expected this trio to be, I guess, a far more frequent occurrence in terms of catching the ball and being a part of this offense. And outside of Courtney Jackson, who I guess has sort of been like that every other game type of guy in terms of getting the ball and his catches and things of that nature, he's been getting his fill more or less, like two catches a game. But I expected a lot more out of him. And then I look at Damien Alford. He's got 4 receptions so far this year. Obviously, the beautiful throw from Garrett Schrader against UConn for the 47-yard score. But that basically is his stat line this season, is that touchdown. Anthony Quealy with one 12-yard catch in the Wagner game last week. I wasn't sure Anthony Quealy was on the team until I saw
Neither
that
was
catch against
I. People
Wagner.
were asking us about that. We've been
Yeah,
tweeted at, DM'd. What's the story with Anthony Quealy? I don't know. I guess
yeah,
they've decided he's not very good. And I don't know if I disagree with that take.
yeah.
Because last year I watched the ball go through his hands in the end zone on more than one occasion, and I wanted to pull my hair out. So Anthony Quealy, maybe he makes it back onto to the starting core, but I doubt it. Probably not
Yeah.
this time around.
It's been just that trio. Like, I expected so much from all three of them, and Courtney is kind of safe on this list in terms of still contributing and doing their part when it's time. But the other two components of that three-headed monster, that is a very generous term, I guess, going into the season to call it a monster. But that trio of returning receivers that combined for over 850 yards last year, which is, not a bad number given Sean Tucker's got 250 and change, and there were only 1,700 total passing yards. So they were sort of where I was expecting, or where I expected these yards to be. And I guess they're my biggest disappointment in terms of just I don't see the productivity. And outside of Courtney Jackson, I'm not sure where I fall on the contributions that you'll see from the other two. Alford's had a few moments, and I feel like still gets targeted occasionally because of the height. But
And
Anthony
he's
Quealy,
got
as
good
you were saying,
potential, but he just hasn't
yeah,
done it.
it's not there, which I guess is why I'm disappointed. And maybe I'm disappointed because of how high you were on Damien Alford consistently as well. Like, that was your guy, and you've always hyped him up. And it's tough to see. I think even when we had that sort of wide receiver one conversation earlier on in the year, you were like, let's not count out Damien Alford just yet.
That was my
Uh,
pick.
yeah, but it's been unfortunate to see them not sort of be at the level that we thought they were going to in terms of contribution. But I guess, not to spoil your biggest surprises, that kind of can give a nod to your answer there.
True. All right, let's take another quick break for me to tell you about SimpliSafe. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe home security to protect their home. You don't need to earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. Or you don't earn the trust. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know because people I know use SimpliSafe. They protect you with cutting edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. Here's why it's beloved by users around the globe. Uh, People out here are using a really great SimpliSafe technology. They've got everything that's new. Okay. They've got 24/7 professional monitoring. Their agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or can't be reached. SimpliSafe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and outside your home. Smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Our monitoring experts use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break in is real so you can get the highest priority to police dispatch. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege to learn more. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Okay. We roll on here on Locked On Syracuse. Matt Bonaparte, Owen Valentine with you. Let's talk surprises. Go positives here at the end of the episode. For me, it's Aronde Gadsden. This guy came into the season. Nobody really expected him to do well, but me especially. I was not high on him. I had seen not, I hadn't seen much from him, but I don't really know why I wrote him off so early. But I was wrong, and I'm willing to admit that. Aronde has been so good for Syracuse. Every time the ball is in his vicinity, it seems like he makes the catch. Averages 16 yards per catch, 23 grabs through 5 games this year, 366 yards, 3 touchdowns, including, of course, that huge touchdown at the end of the Purdue game. He's been fantastic, and it's just been a pleasure to watch Aronde play. So he is my biggest surprise of the year thus far.
I've been so pleased with Aronde, really. Like his jump to, I know he's listed as a tight end, but wide receiver one, receiving option number one, has been really cool because we just weren't sure what to expect. And then we had ideas when we saw that first depth chart come out, but we still didn't really know. And then he's just sort of progressively solidified that. I see him, I guess, not in the true skill level, but I just like, I think of Cooper Cup and that the ball always ends up with him because he's always open. And like I feel like that's where I sort of stand on Aronde right now, and just like he gets his fill because he's open. And he's not necessarily making the craziest plays or the craziest catches or the flashiest things, but he runs the route well, he gets open, and he does the job. And that's why the ball continues to make its way to him. And I've been astonished to see that. So I would agree in terms of biggest surprises, in terms of the positives so far this year. I went with, and I went back and forth on this, but I'm going to go with my gut and my first thought. I'm shocked to see Andre Schmidt back kicking like he was when, you've heard 3 seasons of former Lou Groza Award winner and really questioned how did that happen. And this season, once again, you can see like, yeah, I get it again. It makes sense that he was once like that and once kicking with that consistency. He's been phenomenal this year. 11 or 10 for 11 right now. He missed a 41-yarder against Purdue, but he hit a 50-yarder in that game. So do they offset? Maybe, in my opinion, they can offset, especially that Syracuse ends up getting a win. But he really he's made the strides, and Dino has had a ton of praise for him and sort of said that he's bought back in this year. I guess in his own way of phrasing it, I sort of beat around the bush and speaking vaguely, if you could believe that Dino is doing that in terms of what you saw from him the last couple of years and what might have been the issue. But it definitely seems like from Dino's perspective, he's changed, I guess, for the better, and is a little bit more committed this year in whatever capacity that might mean. And you're seeing it. He's really done the job. 5 field goals in the Virginia game, just did what you want him to do. Has been kicking the ball through the uprights, and I'll give him the nod because it's once again, it makes sense. I'll repeat myself. It makes sense to hear former Lou Groza Award winner based on the way he's kicking the ball this year.
Yeah. Bob Podcast was talking about that a little bit. How he wants to win that Lou Groza. And that would be really cool, like
Yeah,
career arc for him.
to bookend.
Wins it, walks on, wins it his freshman year, and then finishes and then gets bad. And everyone was like, this guy stinks, especially last
He
year.
struggled the last
He
few
was
years.
awful last year.
Yeah.
And I did not believe in him at any point. And this year, if he came back and won it again, that'd be sick. That'd be awesome. But hey, Andre,
Yeah.
we're pulling for you here. All right,
Honorable
well, that's all the
mention?
time.
Do you have any
go
honorable
ahead.
mentions? Why not?
Caleb Okechukwu,
I like
honorable
that.
mention for me.
I like that. I was throwing Leon Lowry in. I had no
Anwar
expectation.
Sparrow.
Yeah, a couple of the defensive guys that have stepped up via injury.
Sure.
Definitely surprises to come in and compete. And I think, we'll post this at some point tomorrow as well. Leon Lowry was a top 5 PFF grade this week as well. So stepping up, although it was a Wagner game, cool to see.
Still,
guys that we weren't really expecting anything from or even talking about preseason coming in and contributing. Always nice and always worth a little shout in some capacity. So nod to y'all. Well done. Keep it up. But yeah,
absolutely.
good surprise.
All right, well, that's all the time we got today. Go get more on the ACC. Go make Locked On ACC your second listen every day after making Locked On Syracuse your first, of course. Candace Cooper and the local experts of Locked On take you across the ACC in 30 minutes. That make Locked On ACC your second listen. I'm Matt Bonaparte. He's Owen Valentine. We will be back tomorrow with more.